Hey everybody, Pierre Quinn here, and welcome to Sunday Night Live. Our conversation this week is all about elevating your leadership. And I am so glad that you have taken time out of your Sunday evening, or maybe you're watching the replay of this, to hang out with me in this space. This is the place, this is a space where we as leaders come to work it out so that we can spend the rest of the week working it out. And again, it's a privilege, it's an honor. You could be anywhere on the internet, but you're hanging out with me, and I'm really glad that you are. Listen, folks, listen. Last week, Four Nights to Clarity series, Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night was absolutely amazing. And I'm sure many of you who are watching the replay of this hung out with us on the Four Nights to Clarity series. We walked through four keystones to elevate your leadership, not in 2022, but starting right now in 2021. So I decided for this Sunday Night Live session to hop on and give you a recap of Four Nights to Clarity. A recap. We're going to truncate it down into the time that we spend on the whiteboard. We're going to put all of the major concepts on the board. We're going to we're kind of going to try to do it really quickly to give you a snapshot of what we covered, to refresh your memory and to help you, because many of you right now are thinking through your playbook. You're thinking through your strategy. You're thinking through your calendar. You're going over some of the challenges and incredible opportunities that you have this week, and you want to face it with clarity. You want to face it with an elevated perception of your own leadership and the leadership of those around you. So we're going to do this recap session. If you're watching live, if you're watching the replay of this, go ahead and hop in the comment section and let me know if you were there with us anytime during the course of our Sunday Night Live series. If you were hanging out with us, if you spent time with us, even if you peeked in for a couple of minutes, because I know we all have really, really busy schedules. But if at any time during the Sunday Night Live series you peeked in or you went back and watched the replay of it, go ahead and let me know in the comments. We had an incredible group of leaders across all sectors, across all industries, across all disciplines who were hanging out with us. We had faith-based leaders, we had educational leaders, we had nonprofit leaders, we had corporate leaders, all hanging out in this virtual space during our Sunday Night Live series, and it was really an incredible experience. So just in case you missed any of it, you weren't able to catch the whole thing for whatever reason, we're going to do a quick recap session tonight as we begin this conversation on what it means to go through this experience of elevating your leadership. And as we discussed in the series, this is so important because of really the times that we're in, the shifts across the job market. Individuals are looking for organizations to be a part of where leadership is strong, where leadership is committed, where leadership is intent on serving their teams. And they're looking for leaders like you. People are looking for leaders like you and looking to be connected inside of organizations where you serve. So, I want to really quickly talk about a few of the things that we shared in the Four Nights to Clarity series. And I see Evan Morcell hanging out with us in the comment section on LinkedIn. He was with us, super engaging. All the nights. Evan, thank you so much for hanging out with us in the Four Nights to Clarity series. We're going to go through that CARE acronym and how we can apply it starting this week. So one of the first things that we talked about in the series, and this was on night number 1, it was this idea of courage. This was night number 1, was this idea of courage. And we broke down courage like this. We said courage is, okay, this is what I believe, and then that research or data around what I believe. We had Fran Harris hanging out with us on night number 1, talking about her journey in college basketball, in the WNBA, as a speaker, as an entrepreneur, winning a deal on Shark Tank, and then opening up a sportsplex in the Dallas area. And she talked about the data that was surrounding her beliefs. So what you believe plus what you value. What do you value? What are the things that are important to you? So your beliefs plus your values, and then the accelerant, the accelerant to your beliefs and your values is this idea of what's the next right action. What's the next right action that you could take? And we said that after you take these incremental steps of looking at what you believe and looking at what you value and taking the next right action, those build up those cups of courage and actually lead to confidence. So really what it comes down to when we're thinking about this week coming up, and those of you who are hanging out with us or even coming back and watching the replay, feel free and drop this in the comment section. What's a next right action that you should take this week? What's a next right action? When you look at what's going on in your organization, when you look at what you believe, when you look at the values that are important to you, and you look at what's the one thing, the simple step that you can do this week to move your leadership forward. Is it a meeting that you need to schedule? Is it some reflection time with your team? Is it a tough one-on-one that you've been avoiding? What is the next right action? Go ahead and drop some ideas of that into the comment section for us. Want to also give you another perspective on what it means to have courage, because this idea of being fearless is really not possible. Fear is always going to be there, but courage says, no matter the fear, I'm willing to start, I'm willing to keep going, and I'm willing to hold. These are so important to the courage story. I'm willing to start, I'm willing to keep going, I'm willing to hold in the face of my fears, my difficulties, my frustrations. So think about that as we start this week. There are some things that you're fearful of. There are some conversations that you're fearful of. There are some situations that you've been trying to avoid because your anxiety has been at an all-time high, and you've been looking at multiple ways of getting around those things. But the truth is, much of the progress that we want to reach and much of the progress that we want our organization to reach is really on the other side of the things that we have been putting off. So what's the next right action that can move your leadership forward? Okay, the second thing that we talked about on night number 2 was this idea of awareness. So courage is centered around this idea of what's the next right action. Awareness is centered around this idea of, do you have the insight? Do you have the aha moments? Do you have enough ideas to keep you going? And for many of us, this awareness piece, we're looking at, what do I need to know about the organization as far as the key or core awareness piece, but we haven't backed it down enough to, okay, what do I need to know about myself? Evan Morcell says, scheduling a therapy session and posting a job posting for a new editor for him is next right action. Next right action. This is important. Evan, thank you so much for sharing that, because a lot of times when we look at our responsibilities, we're looking at the big picture vision, the big picture goal, and those are super important. But sometimes we start charging toward those things and neglect what's the next right thing for us to do. And then we get discouraged when we charge toward a major goal and we hit failure or roadblocks, and we're trying to figure out what's going on. Many times we were running too far, too fast, and we didn't value the next right thing. So Evan, make sure you schedule that session and post that job posting for a new editor this week. All right, so this awareness idea is centered on a few key pieces. First, it's the knowing of you. It's the knowing of you. And we talked about different assessments that we have taken, the disc inventory, MBTI, True Colors, Enneagram, whatever it is, but making sure you leverage not just a quick quiz that you take, not just something that you go through at the beginning of your leadership training, but really unpacking what these assessments and framing conversations, really what they say about us and how we can better apply them. So it's not just the knowing of you, not just the aha moments about you, not just the insight about you, but also about your team. And I shared this on night 2 of 4 Nights to Clarity. There's so many people who I've had conversations with about assessments, and they've taken 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, and they know where it aligns and where it doesn't align, but they haven't necessarily gone through the process of leveraging this information to build a stronger team and bring clarity to the dynamics on that team. And if this is not the case, then it's really a loss. It's really a loss. I would even suggest, Evan, as part of this job posting and interview process, that you ask the individuals who are interviewing for this editor position to take an assessment of some sort so that you can have that in your toolkit as you're beginning to have conversations. So it's knowing you, it's knowing your team, it's knowing your organization. And this is in terms of really in terms of mapping and tracking the culture of the organization. What are the stories of the organization? What's the history of the organization? What challenges has the organization gone through over the years? And how has that shaped the way the organization is perceived inside and outside today? Here's a couple that we didn't talk about in 4 Nights to Clarity, but I wanted to insert here is understanding the market in which your organization resides. Understanding the market. This is important because there are a lot of things happening in your market. There are a lot of things happening in your industry. And if you're not keeping tabs on what's happening in the market, on what's happening in the industry, you can really put your organization in a disadvantage. So I know Evan keeps up with things happening in video production and in the movie and television industry, because that informs and impacts how he does his work. Advertising industry. I keep up with professional development and the professional development and training industry and the market for speakers and trainers and consultants, because that impacts how I do my work. So you got to know what's going on in the market and how your organization is positioned in the market. And here's the last one. You got to know the numbers. What are the KPIs? What are the key performance indicators for your organization? It is very hard to lead, and it doesn't matter if you're a small shop or a multinational corporation, without having the awareness that comes from the data. Yes, we need the social emotional culture that deals with me and my team and the organization, but we also need to understand market trends and market positioning. We also need the insight that comes from the data of the numbers of the things that we should be tracking in our organization. Yes, Evan, absolutely. I am DISC certified, still DISC certified to this day, and happy to help you out in that regard. Okay, so we talk about courage and elevating our leadership, which is this idea of taking the next right action based on your beliefs and data. And courage is not being fearless, it is starting, keep going, and holding on in the midst of fear. That's really what courage is. We talk about this awareness. You got to understand yourself, your team, your organization. You also got to understand your market, and you got to understand your KPIs. The third thing that we talked about in the 4 Nights to Clarity conversation is that we talked about this idea of resilience. And really how this is how I'm framing out resilience for our conversation tonight and through the 4 Nights of Clarity. Resilience is really all about not when things happen to you only. Resilience is about that bounce back. How well can we bounce back from the things that happen to us? That's really that's the only way you grow that resilience muscle. First, you got to have something to bounce back from. You got to have a difficulty or an incredible opportunity. You got to have a hardship, a friction point to bounce back from. And that's really how your resilience grows. And we talked about Ron Carucci, interviewed him. I mentioned this on my podcast a couple of years ago now. And he said that in order for us to be more resilient, our resiliency increases as we look at who is on our core team. And Evan talked about in his comments earlier that he's going to schedule a therapy session. So Ron Carucci said that critical to a leader's core team, and you can frame out your core team however it needs to fit for you, but critical to a leader's core team is that every leader needs a coach. Every leader needs a coach. And remember, we shared in the 4 Nights of Clarity, a coach doesn't need to be able to do what you do in order to help you do what you do better. Mentors give you perspective and advice based on their experience. Coaches focus on your capabilities, your skills, and growing those capabilities and skills, often to meet a specific goal. So everybody needs a coach, according to Ron Carucci. Everyone, I'm sure Dr. Gary Jones Jr., who's hanging out with us in the comments section, would agree with this. Every high performing leader, or those who look to become high performing leaders, everybody, you need a therapist. You need a therapist because many of us have gone through things in our lives. We've gone through experiences, and it's left these marks, these hooks, these tiebacks that keep pulling on us, and our progress is inhibited because we don't have someone walking us through what those marks and those experiences were. I'll tell you, just matter of factly, a key point of me growing into a 6-figure speaker, trainer, and coach in 2021, a key component of growing into a 6-figure speaker, trainer, and coach in 2021 was having a therapist on my core team. Absolutely, having a therapist on my core team. All right, so we got coach, we got therapist. He also mentions this idea of having a trainer. And remember, if you were with us, Donnie Bettany on, I believe it was night number 3, was having this conversation with us about resilience. And he talked about the lifestyle change, the diet change, the workout change that allowed him to travel with a high intensity and still maintain his clarity and composure, because now his body could handle the rigors. His body, that physical bounce back, his body had what it takes to continue to execute at a high level as the leader that he is for PSP Metrics. So we talked about coach, therapist, trainer, this idea of nutritionist, because what you're putting into your body impacts how you think. So who's on your core team is helping you understand what are the right foods for your blood type, what's the right foods for your goals, what's the right foods according to your health condition right now, and having someone on your core team to talk about that. Terrence Jake says, so true. Therapy has been an escape from what has been holding me back in significant areas of my life. I really resonate with that, Terrence, and want to encourage all of my leaders, all of us who look to be high-performing leaders, or maybe you're not even thinking about high performance. You're just thinking about elevating your leadership in some small way, being a better leader now and into 2022. Got to have that therapist on your core team. Okay, so courage, awareness, resilience. The last one is this idea, execution. And execution is checking the box. Execution is What are we getting done? What are we getting done in our organization? What's actually happening in the organization? What, when we look over the year and we look into next year, but first looking back, when we look, what can we say we've checked off? What can we say we've accomplished? Now, there is this Harvard Business Review and Harvard Business School, and we talked about even Price Waterhouse Cooper, one of the large consulting firms, this leadership and management paradox. And it's this idea that leaders need to be strategic executors. They need to be strategic executors, which means, because there's a tension sometimes between strategy and execution. Strategic executors are those who think, who process, who are future oriented, who bring in data, who track and make analysis, but they also live in the now and get things done. So future oriented, future looking, processing, thinking, collecting data, and bringing that into conversations around strategy, but also checking the box because we live in the now and we realize that we need to get things done. And in order for us to be really effective, our execution needs strategy to go along with it. And there were these 4 A's to execution. The first one was this idea of alignment, which is this idea of, are we pointing people in the right direction? So do the different departments or entities that make up our organization, do they understand how their work supports the mission? And do they understand how their interaction with each other supports the mission? Or do we have this siloed effect where everyone's just trying to do their own thing and no one sees the interconnectivity and we're not all pointing toward the mission? So not just alignment, it's this idea of ability. And remember, ability is, do I have the right people on the team? So we're pointing toward the mission. We have our units in alignment, but are we staffing our units with the right people? One of the biggest things about this as a leader is recognizing that there's a lot of things you may need to let go of in order for your organization to grow. There's a certain grouping of things that only you can do as a leader. Only you can do. There are phone calls that only you can make. There are emails that only you can send. There are meetings only you can lead or facilitate. But there's a huge bucket full of things that you can position, train, delegate others to lead those things. And sometimes we have this inability to retain good people because we won't allow them to be positioned or repositioned to bring out the best in their ability. So we got alignment, we have ability, we have this idea of architecture. And the architecture of our organization, small or large, we have to ask ourselves, is the current organizational chart, is the current workflow, is the current design getting us the results that we need? And if it's not, we have to have this architectural mindset that says we are going to redesign this organization. I know we might have done it for 15 years, and for 15 years we were industry leading, but for the past 5 years we have not been doing a good job. At least according to the market and the KPIs, we haven't been doing a very good job. And how is our structure an inhibitor of the progress that we're looking to make? I know it's an uncomfortable conversation. Just got off the phone. Well, just had a call with a senior leader maybe 2 days ago. They were talking about how their organization has grown significantly in the past 4 or 5 years. And because of this significant growth, a restructuring needs to take place that's going to make some people uncomfortable, that's going to cause a stretch, but it is vital to what is next for them. And here's the last one, is this idea of agility, this idea of flexing, this idea of pivoting. And the world is changing so fast. Ask Kirk Nugent, who produced our Four Nights to Clarity series. He's hanging out with us on LinkedIn. The world is changing so fast. 18 months ago, two years ago, people had thoughts of the only way that we could get data out in an effective way is to bring everyone together, have them in the same space. You can't have, some people were thinking, you can't have high level meetings via virtual context. You can't have elite training via virtual context. 18 months, 2 years ago, sure, big corporations had enterprise level services, but it did not have the connectivity and the intrigue and engagement that now 18 months later is really the hallmark of effective communication in organizations. Kirk Nugent is on the leading edge of that, and he and his live production team. So that agility to think through, I know we've been doing it this way for a while, but what's a pivot that we can make? What's an opportunity that we have that we've never had before, and how can we make the shift to maximize that opportunity? So what you have before you is what we talked about in the Four Nights to Clarity series. This idea of courage, taking the next right action that's based on what you believe and what you value. This idea of awareness as a leader, understanding social, emotional culture of you, your team, and your organization, but also understanding what's the market like for what you bring, what you serve, and also what are your key performance indicators. This idea of resilience, this bounce back, and part of having the strong ability to bounce back, it's having a core team of individuals around you so that you can move forward after difficulty. Dr. Gary Jones Jr. says change hurts, but is necessary for growth. And for a lot of us, our resilience has come as a result of a change that we had to bounce back from or that we had to recover from. And then finally, execution. As leaders, if we're not checking the boxes, if we're not getting things done, if we're not motivating, challenging, inspiring, developing other leaders, then we're not really doing our job. And that depends heavily on this idea of alignment, ability, architecture, and agility. And that's what we talked about on Sunday Night Live, elevating your leadership. So if you're watching this live, watching the replay of this, my challenge for you is to think through how you can use these concepts this week. What's the next right action you can take this week? What's an insight that you can draw from a previous assessment or summary or strategic plan or report that you can use this week to elevate your leadership? Who can you add to your core team, or how many times do you need to check in with your core team this week to strengthen your resiliency? And we got to check off a box. We actually have to get the job done. And part of it is, how can I bring my team in a better alignment? How can I maximize their abilities? How can we, as a leader, how can we rearrange where the pieces are on the board or take the reins off so our team could fly? And then how can we be a bit more agile? Evan says, fleshing out my core team is by far at the top of my priority list. The top. Thanks for raising awareness on how I increase my resilience. Evan, thanks so much for hanging out with us and all the other leaders who are hanging out with us on the Elevate Your Leadership edition of Sunday Night Live. So, yeah, it's been really cool hanging out with you. Yeah, recovering still a little from last week and thinking of new ways to help you as leaders. Is there a way for those of us in the webinar to get a copy of the whiteboard as is? You mean this one, or the ones from during the week This one are the ones from during the week. And I step out of the way on purpose because I know people like to take screenshots and things of that nature. DM me, Dr. Holly, and let me know. Give me some clarity on what you are referring to specifically. Okay, folks, this is all we got for this edition of Sunday Night Live. I'm gonna do some recovery this week. We had a great week last week. I'm gonna wrap up with a couple of clients over the next 2 months. We're finishing off some projects. We got some executive leadership retreats that we're doing. We got some strategic planning that we're doing, and looking forward to bringing insight from those experiences to you. Insight from those experiences to you. And so we need to get some sleep. Evan says, my body thinks it's 11 p.m. Eastern time. The fact that you have this much energy is amazing. I know that fallback throws me. But when I know other leaders are in the room, or other leaders will find value from what we share, then the energy starts going and it starts growing. Okay, I know you're going to have an incredible week this week. I know you're going to lead with so much more clarity. I know you're going to take the next right action. I know you're going to be more aware. I know you're going to bounce back, and I know you're going to check the box and execute and get it done. And I wish you all the best in your leadership this week. So until next time, take care and God bless.